The conventional methods that are in tune with a behaviorist paradigm treat language as an assemblage of various parts of language, of facts of language such as vocabulary, structures. Learners are expected to learn these facts by heart, because the assumptions is that once this is done, they can make use of language, they can make use of these facts whenever they are in need in life or life situations. In order to ensure this result, these approaches take recourse to a variety of strategies that take care of repetition of linguistic facts. Moreover, they focus on skills of language which are to be learnt by learners through rigorous practice. The problem central to all these approaches is that they fail to offer a holistic treatment to language. It is fairly easy to recognize, the sounds and the words and some sentences cannot stand on their own, and always we find this in sort of meaningful way in the discussions, discourses. So what are we need to understand? Now, first, the group one, you try to think about and tell me some discourses that you have find in the print media, and of course the group two, the in between, and you try to find, call out some discourses that you find in visual media. The group three, and I request you go, there's day-to-day life, what are the discourses that you find? Please list out them, please. Okay, scribble something, think about it, and come with your ideas.
Coming to print media, news reports, editorials, advertisements, notice, obituaries, articles, jokes, stories, poems, interviews, review reports, letters, screenplays, skits, etc.
Good.
This we can find through print media.
Print media.
Yes.
Good. And the visual media, so the group two, please.
On visual media, we happen to see movies, comedy shows, songs, sports, news, documentaries, and award functions, and of course advertisements by default.
Yeah, good. For the day-to-day life, the third group.
In day-to-day life, we find discourses in group discussions. It's like conversations between people who are in the market, and others singing songs and stories. This all we find in group day-to-day life.
The good. You have given the fairly a good list of these things, and now shall we call all this as the exist in the language? Shall we call them as discourses? The where the language exists only in the discourses. Okay, these we call discourses. This is something, and we have all the discourses around us in our life in the different domains, but where we need to understand. Since language exists in the form of connected speech that can be named as discourses, we need to have a pedagogy that will help learners produce these. There is no point in teaching and learning discrete units of language such as letters, words, and sentences. The learner have to experience language in use, which means that both input and the output are to be defined in terms of discourses. As we were talking about all these the discrete entities like sounds and sentences and words, if they come together in the form of meaning, then only we call it as discourse. They give some meaning to the language. So any connected series of utterances can be called a discourse. This is a general interpretation that we can come to that. If you really wanted to with this definition kind of thing, a lexicographer might tell us that one of the meanings of the word discourse is related to the use of language in speech and writing in order to produce meaning. These statements might help us to define what a discourse is, but mere definition will not suffice. We should be able to identify the properties of discourses which will help distinguish discourse from sentences. Always we depend upon only a definition kind of thing, but no, if we talked about, we have now discussed the things which we have around us, associating the language with that way that we need to understand what is a discourse and how the discourses take up the language and how the language exists only in discourses, and we'll come to that part. Now, please read the sentence.
This is a boy, that is a girl, there is a pen on the table, these are pencils.
Okay. Who would like to read the second unit?
It's a very fine day, said a timid voice at her side. She was walking by the white rabbit, who was peeping anxiously into her face. Very, said Alice. Where's the Duchess? Hush, hush, said the rabbit in a low, hurried tone. He looked anxiously over his shoulder as he spoke, and then raised himself upon tiptoe, put his mouth close to her ear, and whispered, She's under sentence of execution. What for? Said Alice. Did you say what a pity? The rabbit asked. No, I didn't, said Alice. I don't think it's at all a pity. I said, what for?
Good. Can anybody find the difference between the two readings and come up with the difference between the two readings and this and that?
The first discourse had disconnected sentences, while the second one was more connected.
Yeah. So this is the second is more communicative. Because it has the coherence. There is some kind of connectivity, and it is the language that can be seen in the discourses, such as conversations, stories. Sometimes and dramas also we have this kind of thing. So where we need to go through this area to the classroom situations where the language can make more sensible to the students. This is okay. Yeah. Let us examine another specimen of discourse. Watch the clipping.
At your service, sir. Some starter, please. How about chicken soup? Oh no, I am vegetarian. Would you like to go for tomato soup? Yes. Anything else, sir? Chapati, dry ones, and vegetable stew. How about fried rice? No thanks. Thank you, sir.
Are all sentences in the conversation they are grammatical?
Like to go for tomato is a fragmentary expression. We have to use would you like to go for tomato?
You're right. Are all the exchanges acceptable in this context? And we cannot expect that discourse engaging in communicative situations will consist of all and only grammatically well formed sentences. Let us watch another clipping.
So?
Oh, nothing.
Are you sure?
Yes.
But why?
Just like that.
Just like that?
We can't put any constraint length of a discourse, and it depends upon the context in which the discourse appears. Sometimes even a grunt of a single expletive, that is a swear word or an expression used in exclamation, can be a discourse provided that it is uttered in a proper context. Or it can be a sequence of utterances as seen in short conversation, scribbled notes, narratives, or even a novel that runs into several volumes. The only point that matters is that it communicates and considered coherent in its receivers. Another property of discourse is its subjectivity, and again we'll watch another clipping.
Did you take the medicine?
No.
Good. Did you consult the doctor?
No, but I will.
Good.
Good. Certain pieces of language can be classified as a discourse only by invoking subjectivity. Only the couple who are involved in the conversation knows how to interpret the word good in the conversation. The specimen we have come across reveal another property of discourse. It is called authenticity. Every sentence may not be grammatical, but the discourse has authenticity. Mere grammatical does not guarantee authenticity of a discourse. We have seen that discourses have coherence and use grammar beyond the sentence, and have varying length, and have authenticity, and of course and have subjectivity. And discourse oriented pedagogy necessitate the redefining of the curricular objectives in terms of discourse, and not in terms of sentence level relevant grammar. And it talks about only the communication functions. Let us see how it can be done. Okay, discourse-oriented pedagogy necessitates the redefining of curricular objectives in terms of discourses, and not in terms of structures and their relevant communication functions. Okay, let us see how these was done in erstwhile Andhra Pradesh and now the Telangana, two states where the discourse-oriented pedagogy has been implemented. Two important steps are to be carried out. One, identify the discourses that are to be targeted at each level, and two, identify the level of each genre of discourses. It is expected that the learner in class 1 will be able to construct the discourse or discourses as shown on the screen in table 1, both orally and in the written form of by virtue of listening to the reading these discourses. If you look at this discourses as follows, dialogue. The first, it goes with the description of an object. Sometimes it is like a story, one picture where the given by the teacher, and children look at the picture and they try to get something out of the picture. Of course, the teacher facilitate how the children would think and produce language. And next, followed by this description, the story. And of course, after the story also, the constructing of the story, and they can have some rhyme or song. And it in class 12, the discourse targeted are shown in table 2. See the discourses targeted at grade 12. Let me read those discourses. One is novella and letters, personal and of course official, notices for various occasions, comparing, minutes of functions, running commentary like for example cricket and football, etc., profile, biographical writing, short stories, editorial, advertisements, memories, travelogues, prefaces, news reports, critical reviews of stories, dramas, films, essays, soliloquy, drama script, and of course choreography script. As all can be seen from the list of higher, we go up, the more number of discourses are targeted. Also there will be differences in the features of each discourse. And at this juncture what we need to focus on. So discourses are the same from the class 1 to 12, but there are the differences in the features of those discourses that we target. And from the class 1 onwards, in the discourse oriented pedagogy, where we focus more on thinking from the end of the students, they take part in the language production and they go in spiraling way, and at the same time the features and imbibing the features when they go grade by grade, and this makes a lot of difference, so that in the finally the final objective of this discourse oriented pedagogy is that students should produce the language on their own with the right facilitation of the teacher. As we have discussed, we have to have a pedagogy that provides a holistic linguistic experience to the learners. It is in this backdrop that discourse-oriented pedagogy, that is DOP, came into being. The salient features of DOP have been spelt out in Anandan 2006, which can be summarized as follows. The learners get a rich linguistic experience by virtue of spiraling of discourses and themes. The intuitive idea is that on the one hand, the language input and output of the learners include a variety of discourse genre, which the recurrence of same theme, and on the other hand, the recurrence of the same discourse genre, which different themes. Take for example, the recurrence of the theme marginalization in a variety of discourses such as story, poem, essay, drama, etc., which the learners read, listen to and construct to put in a different way. At all stages of classroom transaction, the prime concern is to make inputs comprehensible to the learners so that there is no need to check comprehension. DOP assumes that comprehension is a process that takes place in the mind of individual learner by virtue of interplay of several factors such as the context of discourse, the communicational expectancy triggered in the learner's mind, familiar words, images created through narratives, brainstorming through interaction, procedural features, gestures and facial expressions, code switching, collaboration with peers, etc. DOP takes care of skill development, but this is done with the context of experiencing a variety of discourse genres and writing for a variety of purposes and writing for a variety of audiences also. Skills will not be taught isolating them from their use or by means of artificially contrived skills lessons. No one can read an alphabetic language without taking into account of the connection between sounds and symbols. But these connections are not the only cues readers use to make sense of what they are reading similarly. It is not the word meaning alone, but will help learners to comprehend what is presented to them orally. There are several cues available for learners to make predictions. Teachers will help children learn how to use all the available cues. DOP conforms the whole language philosophy. There is a solid foundation of research stemming from cognitive psychology and learning theory, psycholinguistic and sociolinguistics, language acquisition and emergent literacy, as well as from education to support a whole language perspective. Researchers have found that whole language learners learning or teaching fosters much richer range of literacy attitudes, abilities and behaviors than more traditional approaches, since the focus is on process and not the product. Any teacher who is sincerely interested in becoming a discourse facilitator can become one. In fact, the teacher's role is minimal. We believe that all individuals, whether they are teachers, administrators or students, can grow and change. The list of discourses to be constructed at various levels does not specify what features of these discourses are to be learned. We have to identify the various linguistic levels of these discourses. We developed a fully inventory of all possible features of each of 20 genres of discourses targeted at grade 12. From these, we identified the features to be addressed in each grade. The academic standards was stated in such a way that they made suggestions on input and of course output. For example, here is a set of academic standards relevant for discourse and the conversation at grade 8. I mean, we have taken here example as grade 8. Listen to and read dialogue related to specific context. Construct dialogues containing a few exchanges using short expressions and tags wherever necessary, orally and in writing. Role play own dialogues related to specific contexts using appropriate actions and voice modulation. Interact effectively with others on themes that are relevant to them, seeking and giving explanations, asking for confirmation and expressing agreement and disagreement. Now, we'll totally wrap up what are the concepts that we discussed in this lesson. Thank you.